All right. Yeah, man, I always get excited when I hear that recording in progress. All
We're
right. So
live.
yeah, we live in this joint. All right. So cool. I'm excited. Hey guys, what's up? My name is Andrew Baines. This is my co-host,
Eliseo?
and we're Custom Journeys. Today we're going to be interviewing a good friend of mine, somebody I've known for probably about 10 years now. His name is Darrell Balderramma. He's actually the director of undergraduate research at the University of Texas, San Antonio, also known as UTSA. And today he's going to be telling us his story about how he got involved with STEM outreach. And then also he's going to give some pretty cool advice as far as how you, if you're a minority or black or brown student that's interested in STEM, how you can get involved with it and hopefully reduce some of the financial burden of a college education. Thank you all for watching. So let's go ahead and get started with our interview today.
Sounds great. Let's let him in.
There you
Good
go.
morning.
Hi, good morning.
How are y'all?
Doing
Good,
well.
good.
How are you?
I'm doing well, doing well. I had a little bit of a rough start this morning, so my phone got wet yesterday,
Mm-hmm.
and you guys know how that story goes.
Yes,
Aside from
man.
that,
Oh,
everything's
wow.
great.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, I'm sorry to hear about your phone. I hope you get it shipped to you very soon. A new one.
Thank you.
All right, Darrell, we're very excited to have you. And thank you, Andrew, for connecting us to Darrell. Let me just give a quick introduction. Darrell Balderramma is currently the Director of Undergraduate Research at UTSA. Previously, he was the Director of Retention and TRiO programs. And he has a doctorate in education with a focus on higher education and higher education administration. And he has over 15 years of experience in outreach towards minority and first gen students. So we are very excited to have you here, Darrell. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. And if I could just make a correction, I have not finished my PhD yet. I'm still enrolled. I'm
Still
hoping this
enrolled.
year.
All
I'm
right.
still enrolled. I should be done this year. So I just want to make that
Okay.
note that I'm not completed yet.
That's cool. Yeah, I give Eli a hard time about finishing up his PhD. He's finally at the finish line now. So he's Eli is graduating, I think, this summer, right? In August.
Yeah. I was just about to say, Darrell, that I'm right there with you. Uh, yeah, correcting people
Feel
about
my
that.
pain of being
Yes.
ABD. Yeah.
ABD is a wonderful place to be.
So hopefully in May we'll be done. It's been a long journey. Andrew can tell you all about it. I've been in this program for forever.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, yeah.
no, excellent. Hopefully, we can get through some of that journey here today. So today, we would like to dive into your academic and career journey, but also maybe towards the second half of the hour, we want to dive into your mindset, your perspective on STEM education. Andrew and I, we built this podcast for the purpose of trying to provide a little bit of guidance for people from our communities in how to better reach their STEM goals if they choose to go that route. I'm very much excited to talk to you about that. But yeah, to get started, why don't you give us a little bit of an intro about yourself, what you do now, and what does the Director of Undergraduate Research do at UTSA?
Sure. Well, good morning again, and thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and have a conversation about what it is that I do here at UTSA and what my internal passion is about helping to support students. So I'm happy to do that. My current role, I'm the director of the Office of Undergraduate Research, and I also serve as the director of the McNair Scholars Program and the LSAMP program as well. And in the Office of Undergraduate Research, I manage the resources that we have to support students. And one of those resources is the Journal for Undergraduate Research, where students have an opportunity to publish their research and creative inquiry findings. And this is a peer-reviewed journal that is indexed in our library. So it could be cited and sourced throughout the world, right? So that's an exciting opportunity that I get a chance to work with. In general, my role here is to help support undergraduate research efforts across all of the different colleges here at UTSA and help to promote different opportunities, linkages, and how to make it a better and seamless opportunity for students. A lot of times people have this conception of just research in general, whether they know it or not, it could be a little intimidating, right? And when you think about working with faculty, even more so, that can be a scary thing. Why why I mention that is because a lot of the work that I've done in my time here at UTSA has focused on working with first generation students. And these are the students that do not know about these opportunities or how to even start to have those conversations. And so in my office, we create programming that is specific to help those students outreach and target those folks that traditionally are left behind or not informed with those opportunities up front. So we try to do our best to get that information back out into the hands of students, all students, and inform them of the different opportunities. We also do a lot of, and Andrew can share a little bit about this. I also like to toot the students' horn, if you will. I know that's a cliche, but I want to celebrate students and their achievements. And so anytime we can put them on a pedestal or a platform and, cheer them on, I want to be able to do that. And so we do different events throughout the year to help support students, give them a platform to present their work, but also to celebrate them throughout. Because it's not easy. There's a lot on undergraduate students' plates. And then when you think about folks that got to work full time and they have families, it can be very, very challenging. So we want to do everything and that we can so that students have a really, really meaningful experience, because we know that undergraduate research is a high impact practice, and that in itself can really pay dividends down the line for folks that are going to go into a career in industry or graduate school. So that's a little bit in a nutshell what I do in my role, but I also serve on a number of different committees throughout the campus because I've been here for so long. This is my 16th year now working in higher education at UTSA.
Awesome. Yeah. So, man, it sounds like you do a lot, and we're definitely going to get into it. And yeah, I know firsthand, like the impact that a lot of the programs that you run and you help promote at UTSA, the impact that they have on students. I'm one of those students that is impacted positively. And I'll give a brief story, about being put up on that pedestal. So, I mean, working with you, Darrell, it's been almost a decade, which is crazy. But yeah, when I first met you, I was in the LSAMP program. And I think at the end of that program, the summer program, we got a chance to go to El Paso and kind of do like a poster presentation. That was my first one of any kind. So that was a good opportunity to kind of spread my wings a little bit, but get outside of the city limits and go further west and see more that's out there. But not only that, I think the following summer we had like a student competition, right, where we had to write like a paper, and it was like a competition to see who had the best paper. And so I think it was maybe like 6 to 8 of us competing. And first place prize was pretty important because first place prize got a chance to go to Madrid. And I was like, all right, I got to do this. I got to do good. Now, it might have been a cash amount associated with that as well. But anyway, I competed. Anyway, unfortunately, I didn't get first place. So I wasn't in line to get a trip to Madrid. But I think I had done some good work, and I know that I had people in my corner going to bat for me, like Darrell, and at that time, Dr. Millwater and others of the same. So Darrell called me into his office one day. He's like, so basically, do you want to go to Spain? I was like, the hell kind of question is that? I was like, yeah, I'll go. So he's like, I got some extra money. If you want to go, you can go. And he was like, so you can go and your advisor can go. So I was like, what? I was like, yeah, let's do it. So that's actually the story of how I got my first trip abroad. And before that, I had never been outside of the States. We had did some family trips from Cali and Florida and stuff like that, but nothing where I got a chance to go all the way to Spain and kind of explore a whole different culture and world over there. And not only that, but my advisor was pretty excited about it too. He got a free trip out of it, right? So, I mean, that makes me look all the more better because it's like, not only do I get a trip, but I'm like, hey, I got some money and I got a free trip for you as well. What do you think? And he's like, yeah, of course, I'm coming. So yeah, it was really cool, a lot of fun. But yeah, that's just a brief story of like some of the impact that like the program LSAMP and some of the other programs that you run have. And the opportunities that they provide students. But not only that, but I think that speaks to the type of person you are. I want to share that story so people can get an idea of like what kind of person you are and like how you go to bat for your students and really support them and uplift them. So yeah, man, I'm excited about having you on today. But yeah, I just wanted to share that story real quick.
That's awesome. I remember that. Yeah, thinking about, because for me, I'm a first gen student myself, right? I come from a low income family. And I didn't know about a lot of opportunities. But I do know that higher education for me opened so many more doors. And so I want to do the same for others, right? Pay it forward. That's my type of leadership style, is servant leader, to help folks out as much as I can. And there are times that, I mean, that's a great story, and I'm so glad that you share that, because there are lots of folks that don't even I have another student that had never been on a plane before. We were just going to Dallas, so I mean, it was like a 20-minute flight.
Yeah.
But to her, that was like, oh my God, like I'm getting a chance to experience new things. And that's really what it's about at the end of the day, right? Giving you an opportunity to experience and choose things that maybe you want to do, or maybe you hadn't been exposed to, and seeing what opportunities are out there for you. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, no problem. So, Darrell, we're gonna definitely come back. Me and Eli definitely both have a lot of questions to pick your mind. We were talking beforehand about like a lot of the different issues we see with minorities getting into STEM. But before we get there, we just kind of want to get to know you better, and also let the audience get to know you, just to kind of have a better understanding of who you are and kind of where you come from. So we want to kind of rewind a little bit, go back in time a little bit, back to, according to your LinkedIn page, you studied sociology.
Not that long ago.
Yeah. According to your LinkedIn, you studied sociology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And you say you're from San Antonio, right? So what was that experience like, moving from San Antonio to Wisconsin, your first gen college student? What was that experience like, transitioning from way down south to way up north, and being on your own for the first time?
Yeah, a lot of folks ask me that question, and I always enjoy telling the story because it's pretty interesting when you think about it. So I'm from South Side of San Antonio, born and raised, and I'll always represent the South Side, because that's my home, and that's the community that helped to create who I am today. So I will always go to bat for the community. But I also know, being a product of that community, that higher education isn't something that is brought to the forefront. It's not something that's talked about. And I think that it's unfortunate that there's so much potential that gets untapped because students just don't know about the resources that are available to them, right? Luckily for me, there was a recruiter that came to our high school and invited students to hear about, the University of Wisconsin-Madison and all the great things that they were doing. Unfortunately, I wasn't part of that group because it was like the top students, and I wasn't the top student. I did okay, but I wasn't the very top. So my best friend, though, was in that presentation, brought the brochure and said, "Oh my God, this school is amazing. They have these great things, and we should go, you and I, and we'll be best friends forever," and all of that great jazz and whatnot. 17-year-old mind thinking, okay, we can do this.
Yeah.
And I applied, and she didn't. And when I got my, because here's the other real piece of all of this. So I come from a very, very low income family. So we didn't have resources to pay for college, and it's expensive, right? And then to move from South Texas to 1,200 miles in the Midwest is going to be a pretty significant feat. But
out of state tuition.
Yeah, all of that, right? So, and these aren't things that I really considered. However, the university at that time was doing a really large and aggressive Latino outreach recruitment program. And they focused all of their efforts and resources on South Texas, specifically San Antonio. And so my freshman year at UW, there were 38 Latino students from San Antonio in Madison, Wisconsin. None of us knew one another. We were from all these different schools, but we built that community very, very quickly, because one thing also that I will share, being in the South Side, my high school was 98% Mexican American. And that's how it was K through 12. And that's all I knew. And that's how I thought the world was. Going to Madison, it's not that. In fact, we were less than 6% of the entire student body population. And when you think about 48,000 students, that's not a lot of Latino students. And so that in itself was a challenge. So they were offering money for students to come, but it still was a struggle because it was a culture shock for sure. Though it's cold.
Oh, yeah, I've experienced it.
And, it was rough that first year, I'll be honest. And I already had my transfer paperwork to submit to come to Texas State, because I wasn't sure that I could handle that transition, because it was difficult. I was homesick, and I was like, this is not what I was used to, racially speaking, right? I am very fortunate that I can pass because I'm very light and fair skinned. But there were still definite issues just because of my name that caused some strife at times. But the one thing that I would share is that what kept me at UW, and what I would give advice to students who are getting into higher education for the first time, is to get involved in something, whether it's a student organization, whether it's undergraduate research, whether it's programs like LSAMP, McNair, or anything where you're tied back to the university. That is going to help ease some of the stressors that you come with a new experience, like moving across country, and being a first generation student at a majority serving institution. So, but I got involved, and I built community, found community, and it helped to support me and rise me up, and show me what the potential can be. And so that is what basically trained me to help and provide that for others here at UTSA. So.
That's amazing, Darrell. I can't help but say that I very much empathize with your background. I grew up in Houston, and you just replace Mexican with Salvadoran, and it's effectively a very similar story. And what I just want to add here, that it seems to be, people from our communities are very reliant on our familia to survive and to build our identity. And so it's very difficult, I find it, for a lot of us to adapt to a different environment when we don't have access to that family. And so I've actually known other people from my community that have gone to an Ivy League or to a well-renowned institution and have had to drop out because they couldn't adjust as well, or didn't have the resources, or didn't have the half a dozen or so other Latino students around to build a community from. So that is a big hurdle for us, for people from our communities, for sure. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely. I was going to say fun fact. It's not a fun fact, but it's a fact. I mentioned that the cohort was 38. We didn't graduate 38, unfortunately. I think at the end of the day, out of that 38, I think 11 finished. So those numbers aren't good, and there's a reason for that, right? And there's a number of different variables too, but it is a reality for sure. It's a struggle, and it's difficult, and not only for Latino students, but for Black students too. I mean, the Black and brown folks at UW, we stuck together,
right,
to help one another.
Yep, for survival.
Exactly.
Literally for survival. Okay, so Andrew just, I think he just had a computer issue. This happened once before we started recording, so he'll be back on. But yeah, no, moving forward, and I think we'll touch on that hurdle that a lot of us from our communities face in trying to reach STEM profession. But before we get there, I want to continue walking through your academic journey. And so you graduated from University of Wisconsin-Madison with a degree in sociology, correct?
Correct.
What kind of led you to wanting to pursue that?
So I'll tell you, it's a funny story. I did not start. Um, did not. I did not go into UW thinking I'm going to get a sociology degree. In fact, and then again, this goes back to the heart of being a first generation college student. I had no idea what I wanted to major in when I was going to school, and I just applied because I knew that was something I had to do, or I thought was supposed to do. But thinking about all of the things that we recommend for students now, I didn't do any of that. I just kind of threw myself in. I registered literally when I got there. There was no courses that were literally available. So I kind of just got the bottom of the barrel. And after that, I started thinking, well, what the heck am I going to do? And I thought, well, I want to do communications, mass communications, because when I was in high school, I was a broadcast journalist student, and I enjoyed doing that. So I thought, this is what I'm going to do. Unfortunately, I didn't make the cut for the school. I wasn't admitted into the program because of the high GPA requirement. So I thought, well, crud. Okay, well, let me try another route. Let me go to the journalism school and I'll try that route. Well, I didn't have the GPA for the journalism school either. So I'm like, well, crud, what am I supposed to do? And a friend of mine said, well, just take this class because we were starting to register. And it was kind of like, I don't even know what this was. It was an intro to sociology. No, miento. It was sociology of gender, which I thought, what the heck is this? So took the class, fell in love with that course. And I thought, you know what? I want to take another class. So I took another class, and then I want to take another class, and I enjoyed that. And so that was kind of what got me into understanding what sociology was and is. And so it just kind of just happened because I didn't have the GPA to get into the other two programs. And it was luck, but I really did enjoy the program because it really was one of the best in the nation at that time. So it provided a really great frame of reference for me moving forward, and I really did enjoy that.
Fantastic. It's another instance where just because your GPA is low, just because you have struggles in school, doesn't mean that you're a failure, right? But I
Correct.
feel that's another misunderstanding of STEM, and getting a higher education degree in general, that you have to be some kind of genius, or
Correct.
or you have to be good at everything. And the
There's a
reality is that's not the case.
huge misnomer. There is this conception or this perception that you have to be very, very rich and very, very smart to go to college. And that couldn't be further from the truth. There are lots of different opportunities that are available for folks, different programs, and I would encourage students to always seek those out and talk to people about what they may be interested in. There are ways to do it. Sometimes they don't present themselves immediately, but there are folks at different institutions that are there to help students make sure that they figure out a way. I always say that it may not be easy, but it's not impossible.
Every single, Andrew, we can speak to this. Every single person we've interviewed thus far has had some type of struggle during college. It wasn't all roses. There was some point of conflict that they had to overcome. And if you go through that, it's normal. And like you said, there are resources that are available to help you. It's just a matter of finding them. And I think that's one of the biggest hurdles for students from our communities. We just don't know whose doors to knock on to get help, right?
And also just to know that it may not always go the way that we want it to. It may not be the way that we see it in TV and film. It may not be the way that our cousin's college experience was. And that's okay. Just know that figuring out a way to not throw in the towel, right? And to keep moving forward, because the more folks that we get that are first gen, people of color that are getting their degrees, they in essence are opening and clearing that pathway for more and for others. And we all know that, that diversity of thought and mind is so important, especially at this day and age, where representation matters. And so we want to make sure that we get more folks to the table, and get them prepared, with the different opportunities that higher education can provide.
Absolutely. All right, Andrew, we got you back. Welcome back.
Yeah.
To the show.
Comcast don't want me to be great, man. So they just dropped my internet for a minute, but I'm back. So yeah, Darrell. So thanks for speaking to like your undergraduate experience yourself. So when you one more college question, and then we'll kind of transition into your journey as an outreach at UTSA. So what do you kind of mentioned some of the programs at Madison, Wisconsin, that kind of helped you, and then also that sense of community that you developed with the other students from South Texas. What is there anything else, any other kind of resource or program that you felt that really kind of helped you be successful in the long run as an undergraduate student?
So there are two programs that I was fortunate to be a part of, and one of those was a TRiO Student Support Services program, which is interesting. I'll talk about how that came full circle here in a sec. But one of the first people that I met when I stepped foot on campus was the director of that program. Her name was Dang. And the sweetest thing, saw that I was a little scared and nervous, and said, we're gonna be here to help make sure that you graduate from this place. And sure enough, they were there at the very end when I did cross that stage. So I owe that program a lot of love and support and recognition, because they did definitely help me to navigate that unfamiliar system and help me to get across that stage. Where it became very interesting is about 6 years ago, I had the opportunity to serve as the director of that program here at UTSA. So help to provide services and support for the program that helped to provide services and support for me. I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah.
And so that was really, really, really neat. And I still have a lot of love for TRiO, for all the work that they do. But another non-academic support program was really just a student organization. And that student organization was called MECHA. And this stood for Movimiento Estudiantil Chicano de Aztlán, which was the Chicano student group on campus. And they were really my support system, and provided me leadership opportunities. I served as the co-chair and the chair of the organization when I was there. And I got a chance to build connections with folks that I still talk to this day. And I really attribute a lot of my community work, outreach support, to that organization, because that's where I first got a taste of that community organizing when I was an undergrad. And so I replicate some of that in my own professional work now because of those experiences, the positive experiences of that student organization, which still exists to this day. And fun fact, my current assistant director from the McNair program, one of my staff, is a graduate of UW-Madison, and he was also in that same program. Had no idea when I hired him. It just kind of came out later, but I just thought that was interesting that we had a very similar journey, and we're both doing the same kind of work now. So
awesome. Yeah, I think those things like have a big impact on you. And me and Eli, we've kind of touched on some of the different things that have had like an influential impact on us growing up. And it's interesting to see like that common thread where like something made a big impact on you, and regardless of what direction you go career wise, a lot of times it always comes back full circle, right? Where you try to have that same significant impact on others. And I'm glad to see that you did the same thing. And since you brought up TRiO, I think it's a good time to kind of like transition into like more so your role at UTSA. So, well, my first question would be like, how did you end up at UTSA after graduating from UW? What was kind of the journey there, and what role did you go into at UTSA?
Great question. So when I graduated, I actually had to take one summer class. So statistics as an undergrad was my Achilles heel, still is to this day, TBH. And I struggled with it, and I still struggle with it to this day. But it was that if I didn't pass the class, I wasn't going to graduate. And so I had to go to summer school, took the class and passed. And it was very interesting trying to explain that to my mother, by the way, who came to graduate, drove all the way up, right? And, yeah, take the pictures, cap and gown. And then she's like, okay, well, let's go. And I'm like, well, I can't go home. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, I have to take a summer class. And she goes, well, I thought you just graduated. I'm like, well, I did, but I have to take this class. And so she was really upset. So she's like, I feel cheated. I feel like you're not even done. And I feel like you're not even, I'm like, oh my God. Anyway, took the class, moved back to San Antonio that summer of 2003. And I started immediately after my summer school program, my master's at St. Mary's University in San Antonio. And at that time, I started looking for work. I needed to find a job to, I was a big boy now, like find a job and make, hundreds of millions of dollars a year.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find anything. And it took like 6 months. I was applying anywhere and everywhere at, libraries, at schools, at restaurants, at, big box stores, anything and everything. I just needed a job and I could not get one to save my life. So I just kept, staying with it and kept applying.
Darrell, real quick, sorry, but what year was this when you were trying to look for employment?
2003.
Okay, so before the recession.
Yes.
Okay.
So I couldn't find anything, and then I landed this job at a call center, and I thought, okay, well, this isn't how I thought I was gonna end up, but I needed to, pay the bills. So I did that for 8 days.
Okay.
And I actually kind of enjoyed it. I'm a Leo by nature, and so I'm a little competitive. And so the framework that they used is they pit people against one another. Like, how many calls can you take, and how many can you take? And I was like, shit, I'm gonna do this. I wanted to be. So I did very well at the job, but it didn't pay very well. The schedule was horrible, and it was not flexible for my grad school. During that looking for a job, a friend of mine said, hey, well, we're applying at this nonprofit. Why don't you just submit your name? So I did, and I got an interview when I got the job at the call center. And on that 8th day, I got the call that said, hey, you got this job. And so I told the call center, I'm like, thank you, but I got to go.
Yeah.
So I started this nonprofit where I did case management and working with students from my community on the south side of San Antonio. And we got a chance to do all kinds of after-school programs to help support students in the community. And so I really did enjoy that. And I did that for a little less than 2 years. And at that time, one of the programs that I got to manage was working with middle and high school youth. And the curriculum was kind of just keep these kids out of trouble and keep them out of jail type of thing. And I thought, okay, well, I get it, but can we do something else? That just sounds
high expectations.
Yeah, like that's dumb.
Yeah.
So I started doing like college awareness, college kind of exploration type things. Like, don't just think get out of jail, but think what else you can do. And so we started doing that, and the students enjoyed it, and I really enjoyed it because again, remember what I shared about when I was in Mecha and some of that things that I got to do there, I kind of just took that and applied that to this new opportunity when I was working with the students. While that was going on, opportunity at UTSA opened up, and a friend of mine told me, hey, there's this job at UTSA that sounds like what you're doing now, and I think they pay more. Take a look. So I did, and it was the assistant director for the University Outreach Center, which was a center to help middle and high school students get to college.
Nice.
And I'm like, that's what I'm doing now. And this would be more money and more opportunity, more resources and support to do. I mean, it's the university, for crying out loud. And I was working at a nonprofit, which quite frankly, we didn't, I mean, the building was horrible. We didn't have, the copier was always broken and the internet would go down. And I mean, it was just, we didn't have all of the resources that the university did.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, I thought, to create a bigger impact, I need to go where I will have more support. So I applied, I've got the position, and I've been here at UTSA ever since. So this literally is my second job out of college. I've got my master's degree and I'm trying to finish up my PhD now. But I've been here 16 years. I've worn a number of different hats along the way. But you know, one of my favorites is, you know, getting a chance to work with students and seeing their potential grow, and I enjoy it. It's been a wonderful journey. And yeah, that's where I am, and that's how I got here.
Awesome. One quick question. You mentioned TRiO earlier. What TRiO? What does that acronym stand for, actually?
So TRiO are programs that are funded by, or federal funded programs from the U.S. Department of Education. And these were programs that were born out of the Higher Education Act back in the 60s to create more opportunities for minority students. And so TRiO was born from that original legislation. And it grew programs like Upward Bound, Talent Search, McNair, Student Support Services, and Veterans Upward Bound. And all of these programs are designed to help support first generation and low income students and students with disabilities. And the TRiO portion comes from the original 3 programs, which were Upward Bound, Talent Search, and Student Support Services. So those were the part of the original funding of the TRiO, if you will. Mm-hmm. We have more than 3 programs now, but these programs are funded throughout all of the different states and higher education, and at a high level. And here at UTSA, for example, we have 2 Upward Bound programs, 2 Talent Search programs, a Student Support Service, and a McNair. And so we're very fortunate to have funding from the U.S. Department of Ed so that we can do the different outreach programs to support those communities. So for example, Talent Search primarily serves middle school students and high school students. And Upward Bound serves high school students. And Student Support Services serves first year students entering college. And McNair is for those students, junior, senior, that want to go to grad school. So that's kind of like the pipeline, if you will,
gotcha.
To help support students along the way. And the main eligibility is to be a first generation college student, which essentially means that your parents or your guardians did not earn a 4-year baccalaureate degree. And that's essentially what qualify you. And then also being a low income student. And we use the federal poverty line that is published annually to determine eligibility for folks. And that's kind of how the TRiO programs work. And I, for example, was part of a TRiO program, not only in high school, but in undergrad as well.
Okay, I got three quick follow-up questions, and then I'll kick it back over to Eli.
No, go
So
for it.
I'm thinking, I'm thinking in the mind of like, okay, let's say I fit one of those eligibility requirements. Number one, let's say I'm when you say first gen, so your parents or your guardians aren't they don't have a undergrad degree. What about your grandparents? So like, let's say like grandma got like a bachelor's degree back in the day, but none of her kids got a degree. And then my parents, so technically my parents don't have a degree. If my grandparents have a degree, am I still first gen college student, or am I disqualified?
So for the purposes of the program, and this again may vary. So some folks may interpret this a little bit differently, but I'll speak only on behalf of myself. But I would say, you would still be a first generation college student, because the way that it's defined is your parents or guardian, not aunts, uncles, grandparents.
I'll have to do ancestry.com and see
Yeah.
who got what degree back in the day. All right, cool. Awesome. Okay, so that's good to know.
Usually though, the hope is, and it happens, the hope is that, when we think about first generation college students and why it's a difficult transition for them to get involved or to even apply in all of these things, is because it's not something that's immediately talked about at home. For example, like at my family, there was no way in hell that we were talking about, have you wrote your personal statement, son? And how are have you prepared for your SAT? And are you registered? And make sure we're going to do this college tour, and we're going to make sure we get you signed up for that Saturday ACT session. Like, none of that was happening. But you know what? If I had my own kids, you sure as hell I would be doing that for them.
Yeah.
Why? Because now I know. My family did not know. We weren't having those conversations. And a lot of, the majority, a lot of the majority population in this country, they're having those conversations at the dinner table. They are talking about that at home. So they already have that advantage, because it's not something that they learn through a Zoom call or through a book. They're getting it at home. Our folks and our families weren't, not through our own faults. We just don't know what we don't know. And that puts us at an unfair disadvantage, unfortunately. So programs like TRiO try to help to kind of close that gap, and give that information to not only to the students, but to the families as well, because we know through the research that if the first gen students are to be successful, we have to not only support the student, we have to support the family. So those go hand in hand.
Okay, so that's a great statement, and I mean it's so true, because I remember when I wasn't first gen, and I'm the last of three kids, but even in my household, like we weren't really having discussions about, hey, your FAFSA deadline is coming up, and you need to finish up this scholarship application, and these deadlines for colleges are coming up. But I think like my parents were like, I think they were first gen, so I think like or my mom was. I don't think my dad like fully graduated with a bachelor's. But I think as our parents and as we have kids and we talk more and more about these things, it's a lot easier, where a lot of these things that were hard initially, they're just second nature. And I've talked to some kids, I've tutored some kids where like they're at home having discussions about colleges and stock investments and all this other stuff. And I recall like when I was a kid, it was more so like about football practice and what's going on and who got in trouble, why they get in trouble. So, I mean, I think those conversations as they shift, I think that's really important. I'm glad you guys have identified that, hey, we got to go after not only the kids, but also the families. So I guess my second follow-up is like, how do you guys identify these students? Like, is it just like a website, or do you guys know which schools to go target? Or like, how do you guys go out there and figure out which schools and which students need the help the most?
Great question. So when these are grants that we get from the federal government, right? And they are issued in 5-year increments. And so for 5 years of funding, you're able to provide support for whichever community that you put into your initial proposal. So for example, when UTSA sat down and said, we want to submit a proposal to the feds for this TRiO program, This is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to do it. We have to do the research to see where is the greatest need in the community, right? And so there are a number of different TRiO programs in Bexar County, in the San Antonio County, or excuse me, Bexar County in San Antonio area. And so a lot of folks have already, kind of staked their claim, like, we're going to work with these students, and we're going to work with this school, and we're going to work with this school. So you have to also see, okay, well, what's still left out there, and then where's the most need? And that's based off of research that is being done by a number of different folks. So they put this together and say, we're going to work with this school, and this school. If it gets submitted and approved, then those are the schools that they will work with and target to outreach.
Okay.
And those are, unfortunately, are the only ones that they are able to serve in that grant cycle. A lot of this work happens behind the scenes prior to even submitting. And so there's a process that's called a Memorandum of Understanding, where UTSA and particular high school and ISD or district will enter into this agreement, and they'll say, UTSA wants to come into your, Andrew Baines High School, and we want to support first generation and low income students. And we're going to support 2,000 for 5 years, and we're going to do X, Y, and Z. And then the district, and then the university will say, we'll do all this, but we need you to provide us, access to the students, give us a space for a classroom, provide the insurance, or, all these kinds of things that they have to negotiate. If they agree, and that's kind of how that works for that 5-year cycle. And we currently, for example, are ending one of the cycles now. At the next month, one of the talent search programs will end. But they have submitted a proposal to extend that, serving the same population. It's just a matter of, it's a waiting game at this point to see if they will be funded. But that's kind of how it works. And then once we've identified the district and the population in the community, essentially, our staff will then go in and work with their counselors, work with their teachers, and make sure that they establish a presence on that campus, so that the students in the program know this is who I can come to talk about, college related stuff or issues related to college awareness and college knowledge. And so we work very, very hard to establish that person and embed them in that community, so that the student knows that they have, another person that can help them, with that college process. Because when you think about it, and think about, any of the listeners, and even yourselves, what your high school counselor system looked like at your high school. There probably were, maybe 8 or 9 counselors that really didn't do a whole lot of college counseling. It was probably schedule changing and, all that kind of stuff, and testing. So they don't have that latitude, because they have so much other things that are going on. Shout out to all of the teachers, though, in Texas. They're doing it to help support students. But we also know that they're very, very overwhelmed. And they have lacking resources. And so when you have a caseload of 500 to 1, I mean, that's wild. And it's impossible to think that each and every student is going to get that, the same kind of service. And so that's why, ISDs rely on programs like TRiO to help, provide that support for folks. And making sure that they build that connection and that bond with our staff is going to be critical, so that the students, complete the program. And then, we do not recruit for UTSA. I think that's one thing that sometimes folks get a little confused about, because UTSA has this program, right? And let's say Iglesias High School and Baines High School, and what we do while we're there is, Eli and Andrew, we want you to go to college wherever it is that you want to go. If you want to go to University of California, or if you want to go to Florida State, or if you just want to go to, UTEP, or stay here and go to Trinity or UTSA, we want to help you get there. Folks at UTSA are thinking, why are you helping that student go to UTEP? You should be helping them come to UTSA. Unfortunately, that becomes a conflict of interest at that point. We're very, very clear, because the federal government is very clear in saying, we're not giving you this money to recruit to UTSA.
Yeah.
We're giving you this money to embed that knowledge in the community. And if the student decides, more power to them, but y'all better not be recruiting to UTSA.
That makes sense. I mean, I think that's best for the students, right? Because I mean, UTSA might have one program that's good for one student, but maybe there's a program at a different university that will work a lot better for that particular student and what their goals are in life. And yeah, man, your point about the college counselors is like spot on, because I remember we had a class of 500 and we had 2 counselors, I believe, just 2. And I'm like, okay, as student counselor, you got to do like talk to the students about ACTs, college prep. Then you got to talk to them about like life issues and like why are they getting in fights or what kind of behavioral issues they may be having, and then schedule changes. So I mean, it's really a lot, and they are under supported or understaffed. So I'm glad they have programs like TRiO to help out. I think my last question would be, the policy that you guys have in place makes a lot of sense. Like you're going to go after particular schools or particular districts that have like a large population that needs support. I guess my question would be like, let's say I'm a low income or first gen college student, but I go to a better school in San Antonio, like maybe on the Northwest side or wherever is a better side of town. How can I get access to these resources? And I'm gonna sneak in another question. What kind of programs are you guys providing? Is it just college prep? And if so, how can I get access to those resources, even though I'm outside of your target district?
Good question. So that becomes where we need to get creative, right? Because when you think about the federal funding, there are very, very specific rules and regulation and legislation that we have to follow in order to make sure that we are compliant with our funding. Because you never want to have a bad audit finding or a red flag finding or anything like that, because then now you jeopardize the entire program and the entire funding stream. So for example, these TRiO grants, 5-year TRiO grants, they could be, $1.22 million grants. And let's say you do something, where it's a no-no. I haven't seen it in a while, but I do know of funds that have been de-obligated. Essentially, they take the money away and they cite the university and say, all of the money we've given you, now you have to pay us back. And so that's kind of the things that nightmares are made of.
Yeah,
right. So you never want to think, at least for me, I always think about those kinds of things. Sure, this may be the path of least resistance, or it's going to be easier if we just go and do it this way. But at the end of the day, is it worth the risk of the entire program and staff losing their job, the students losing out? No. So making sure that we always have a good understanding of what is allowable and what is not allowable, and following the rules so that we don't get in any kind of trouble. So with that being said, we do have to make sure that those programs are serving those students that and those students only in their programs. However, there is a huge need all across the county, all across the state when you think about it. And so what are things that you can do to help those students that maybe just or in another zip code for whatever reason, or in another high school that fall into the same predicament, but just because they're a block over, they can't exactly. Get the services. Here's the other thing that I failed to mention, and as I was talking, I thought, what, this is an important piece to also note, because it goes to what I'm going to share here in a second. One of the other requirements for our TRiO programs is citizenship or permanent residence. So when you think about that, and when you think about first generation folks and low income folks, there's a huge population of folks that aren't, that do not have their citizenship or residency, and still need those services. So
Dreamers.
Exactly. So what can we do? What can we do as professionals and community members to provide for that community as well? So UTSA has created a number of different programs that are still evolving at this point, to try and capture that particular audience. And when we think about UTSA's path in the next 10 years, and some of the things that they're trying to get to, it requires bringing more folks into the fold, and knowing that our own community is struggling in college readiness, making sure that we are doing things that all students can benefit from. So they've created programs that to help high school students specifically that have an interest of coming to UTSA. They can come to a number of different Saturday sessions. And again, this is open to anybody and everybody, regardless of your status. And it's like a math ready type thing. So they get you, they help prepare you with a number of different soft skills and academic skills, so that once you do come to UTSA, that you're at a better place. Because here's the other thing: students that maybe don't have the best GPA, and are in remedial courses, well, those courses aren't counting towards the degree. And if low income folks are spending money and it's not really doing anything, it's kind of like me when I think I'm gonna run 3 blocks, and then I want to get on the scale, and I better have lost 10 damn pounds after these 3 blocks.
Yeah.
And then I get on the scale and I've got heavier. What the heck's going on? And so my mind says, this running doesn't work. Don't do it.
Yeah.
So that, as silly as that sounds, students will see, they have that same mentality. I'm not making any progress towards degree, but I'm getting more in debt. This is for the birds. I'm going to stop. And they don't continue. And quite honestly, we don't want students to get into, these high debt situations, because
we can do a whole episode on that. Maybe when we do the episode, we'll invite you on, Darrell.
Yeah.
But I sorry, I hate to cut you off. I do have a follow-up. So you spoke in depth about one of the biggest themes we've kind of approached in our short time in this podcast, and that is lack of knowledge and lack of resources. One of the 2 biggest hurdles keeping people from our communities from reaching higher ed. And you spoke about lack of knowledge. A lot of us from our communities don't live, with a neighbor that has an advanced degree, or has a tío or an abuela with an advanced degree that can draw that knowledge from. So folks need to keep in mind that is a privilege, to have that knowledge already there, ready for students to absorb. So, but I'd like you to speak more to the lack of resources, because one of the biggest hurdles that I also faced in my brief career in higher ed, and that is being able to pay for college. And you touched on it with student loans. So if you can just speak to that issue and how different programs that have been there that you've touched on, are designed to alleviate some of that.
Sure. One thing that I do want to just highlight, here locally in San Antonio and the Bexar County, and I'd venture to say that there may be other programs like this that exist throughout the state. But here locally in San Antonio, we have a partnership with the city program, and it's called Cafe College. And Cafe College is essentially what the namesake is. It's a little small cafe, and what they do is they help provide college awareness and college knowledge support for anybody who is willing to listen. And so this is where the community, the local community, the city, if you will, recognize that this was an issue, and making sure that we were preparing that next generation of talent, and getting them the information and putting it in their hands. And so they've been doing this, I want to say maybe for about 10 years now. And again, they serve all of the different areas of the county, students, non-traditional students. So you don't have to be a high school student. You can be, let's say you're, 75-year-old retiree and you want to go back to school, but you have no idea how to do it. You can go and talk to the folks there and they will help get you connected. And so I have a lot of love for those folks that are doing the work that also helps to fill in the additional gaps, right? From those that maybe aren't eligible for TRiO programs or aren't fortunate to be at a school that has a TRiO program. So what can you do? Well, like I mentioned, UTSA is doing these programs. Unfortunately, they're for students that are coming to UTSA, but that's kind of the start of where they're trying to outreach to additional folks. And then the city is using its efforts to also provide that support for students, and regardless of their status. So I just wanted to highlight that for anybody who might be interested and is in the San Antonio or Bexar County area. I would encourage you to reach out to the folks at Cafe College. And I think that most urban areas will have something very similar that will provide that same kind of service. But thinking about the affordability piece that I talked about, sometimes folks think you have to be super rich to go to college. While it does help, having lots of money, it probably makes life a little easier, because college is not cheap. College is expensive, and it continues to get more and more expensive each and every year. And that's probably a conversation that we can have at another day too. But knowing that the cost is rising, what are things that we can do? Well, fortunately, the university, at least here, and most universities, are recognizing that fact, and that recognizing that there is talent in diversity, and that they need to step up to the plate to provide for folks. And so they're offering more and more types of incentives to provide support for students. For example, students that fall within a certain threshold will get tuition and fees waived. So I think there's something at like UT Austin, for example. They have, I think it's the Longhorn Promise. If your family makes under a certain threshold, I think it's 60,000 or 50,000. Unfortunately, I don't have the exact number. If that's what your family income is, then your tuition and fees will be covered for 4 years at UT. UTSA has something very, very similar. Most of the universities in Texas have something very similar. So they're kind of stepping up to help provide that support for folks. So I would encourage folks to make sure that they do their research, because sometimes it can be a little misleading. And if you don't have all of that information, you might jump into a situation that you could regret later. For example, the school might say, oh, we're going to cover all of your tuition and fees. Okay, great. I'm going to go to school. Yeah, but that's not all that there is, right? What about rent? What about food? What about all the other things that go along with this? Sometimes people don't see that. And again, they can get themselves into trouble. Also, so some of the training that we do in TRiO programs, for example, is we talk about the affordability piece and working to apply not only for scholarships, fellowships, but also seeking out those schools that have funding streams that are designed to support their community. For example, just this weekend, we took our first trip in over 18 months. We took McNair students to graduate school visits at Texas State and UT Austin. And so they met with graduate folks, they toured the campus, they got a chance to kind of see it for themselves. But what we tell them is, you want to make sure that you find a school that's going to provide support for you. And that support is financial. And if this school isn't going to offer you $1, well, let's put that in the rearview mirror and see what school is going to offer you. Because there are over 5,000 colleges and universities in this country. The odds are there's going to be one of them that's going to have a better funding package than this one. And so it may take some time, and we can encourage students to push their comfort comfort zones a little bit, because that money, that not money maker, but that money maker, for lack of a better word, may not be, outside, may not be inside 410 or 610. It may be, in Fort Worth. It may be in Idaho. Be okay to, or be open to something like that, so that you don't put yourself in a world of hurt with these debts. And then putting that practice when talking about the career aspect of it. What is the current job prospects of this degree? I want to be an art historian. Great. What are art historians making now? What is the field of art history looking like? Is there a need? Are those types of jobs going away? Do they only make, $12 an hour? Are you okay with that? Talking about those types of things too, so that students make smart, informed decisions, so that they don't get themselves into, something that they may be regretful later on. Does that make sense?
It does, definitely.
Complete sense.
Yeah, you got to start with the end in mind. And I mean, I tell people all the time that ask me questions about college, or even people who I give unsolicited advice about college. Like, don't go to college if you don't know what you're gonna do. Like, it's way too expensive for you to just go there, be undecided for a year and a half, and then major in one thing and change your major to something else. Like, you got to figure that out beforehand and think about where's the trajectory of this going. So technology, or really any STEM field, is where I would be recommending people to go. A lot of other jobs that maybe were really in demand 20, 30 years ago, a lot of those jobs are being phased out for newer technology jobs. So yeah, I wouldn't even waste your time or your money. And also about grad school, the same thing. Like, there's too many campuses, too many universities in America that'll give you free grad school for you to have to pay out of pocket for it, or to take student loans out. So I'm glad you gave that advice as well. I had a question about the McNair scholarship. A big part of your job and a big part of your programs that you've been a part of have all kind of encouraged undergraduate research. And I know I'm very familiar with LSAMP, of course. That was kind of like one of the big things that helped me be successful in my career. But what can you kind of speak a little bit about the McNair scholarship and then the McNair program, and then also the LSAMP program, and how those two might differ or how they might help students?
Sure. So they actually are very, very similar in nature. They both are federally funded. So one is funded by the U.S. Department of Education, and then one is funded by the National Science Foundation. And so they both have those federal ties, and they both have a research component. So LSAMP specifically is a program designed to encourage underserved communities to engage in undergraduate research in STEM fields. So that's one thing I want to make the distinction here. So LSAMP is designed to create opportunities for students of color in STEM fields, specifically in a summer research program. So we want to make sure that students understand what research is like, and then give them an opportunity to work alongside a faculty mentor. That practice is what we consider in higher ed as a high impact practice. And so high impact practices yield really, really positive results for not only retention, but also for positive outcomes in graduation. So those that are engaging in it have a higher likelihood to not only continue in the research, right, but also graduate. So that there's positive research associated there. LSAMP really is just to get students kind of dip their toe, see if it's for them. We also kind of talked a little bit about grad school. I kind of threw that in there because it makes some sense. But there aren't specific objectives where we're being kind of graded on that, because every grant you're going to have your outcomes. And so long as the student has a positive experience in the research, we're doing okay with LSAMP. And again, it's only focused on STEM. McNair, on the other hand, is not necessarily just focus on the undergraduate research. McNair's focus is getting undergraduate students prepared for doctoral studies. So we want students to go off and get a PhD. McNair is designed to diversify the professoriate. And so that's kind of what we were being graded on in that program. So every year we're asked to see and track how many of our students are going and getting their PhDs. And so knowing that that's what we're being graded on, and knowing that undergraduate research plays such a big role in doctoral completion, that's why we have a summer research program built into the McNair program, because we kind of see it like a training program for that next step in graduate school, because they're going to have to understand the process. And quite frankly, it makes them more competitive when they think about where they're going to be applying. And again, when we think about the competitive nature of it, we want students to get those fellowships and those research dollars to help pay for grad school, because again, it's expensive. And if they don't have that experience, and if they've never really done it, well, that kind of puts them at the short end of the stick there, and it doesn't help them in any way. So that's why McNair has a summer research program, so that kind of trains them and gets them ready so that they are competitive in their PhD journeys. And the other piece, so that's kind of a little bit of a difference there. And McNair is not solely a STEM program. So students from any major, so long as they are interested in a PhD, have the GPA and meet the eligibility requirements, they can apply and be a part of our program.
Awesome. Okay. So you've mentioned probably like 5 different like resources, maybe 6. So I guess my last follow-up question is just to kind of summarize everything. And I like the way you did it earlier, where you mentioned the Jumpstart program. So could you kind of summarize, like, let's say I'm starting in middle school through the PhD, what are the different programs in order that I should be looking at, especially if I'm a minority, first-gen student, low-income student in middle school? And so I think you said it was Jumpstart. So like Jumpstart to McNair. Can you kind of summarize what those programs are and what years I should be looking at them? And if there's any other ones that you want to throw in there real quick?
Sure. So I think for any of the folks that are listening, I would encourage the students and the parents, or any of the guardians that have young folks at home that want to learn a little bit more. I would encourage them to see if their middle or high school has any type of TRiO programming. These, like I said, they're pretty much all throughout not only the state of Texas, but all throughout the U.S. So I would start there. And if they do, reach out to that staff member and just kind of see what are the eligibility requirements and what is the process to apply, when do they take applications, and how do they apply. And that program that starts in the middle school level is called Educational Talent Search, or Talent Search for short. And that's a program that will typically work with 7th and 8th grade students, and really just kind of talking about, exploration and what is a good study habit, and, how do you set a goal, and just starting that seed very, very early on. And then in the high school, the Talent Search program will also be available for folks, but there also is another program, and that one is called Upward Bound. And Upward Bound is a really neat program, because they have a summer program as well. And they work with high schoolers during the summer, preparing them for what to expect in higher education, what to expect. How do you prepare for going to college, and what does the schedule really mean? And how do you study effectively? And what does good note taking look like? So they do all of these things, some of these soft skills, refine some of those, help them to not only apply, but also to find, some of those resources in terms of scholarships. and help them to apply. And so they all have these different programs in the summer. And one of the really neat things that I think is cool about Upward Bound is they take their students on college visits. So I really am a strong advocate for any student that is considering going to college. Get out there and walk around the campus, and I liken it to buying a car or a used car. You're gonna buy a car or a used car, you sure as hell better test drive it. Make sure that you like the way that it drives and the way it feels. The same thing has to be said about your college journey. And so these programs like Upward Bound will take them to college campuses, and not just in their backyards, but across the country. Some of our programs, we're taking students to Colorado, to Utah, to California. These kids had never left 410 or the county. So they're getting a chance to really see it for themselves and say, you know what, I could see myself here. Or really helping them to see what the possibilities could be like and preparing for that. And so that's the Upward Bound program. Once they get into community college or four-year university, seek out student support services, or SSS. This is a program that if they were eligible for Talent Search or Upward Bound, they're automatically eligible for it. And so they want to seek that program out, because SSS will help you not only navigate, some of the typical academic stressors. They provide tutoring services. They also will do a lot of mental health and mental health support. They do intrusive advising. They can also provide help in getting, jobs and internships. And so it's another great program that I have a lot of love for, because again, I was a part of that. And then after that, let's say your first and second year, you can get involved with McNair your junior year, and you can do a summer program your junior year and do undergraduate research that summer. And then we also will take students to go and visit those different graduate programs and help prepare them for their personal statements, their applications, their GRE, GMAT, or whatever test they may be required to take for admission. So that's kind of the progression that I would share in terms of TRiO programs. Now, one other program that I also would like to just do a little shout out to, because they also are doing some very, very similar work. And it's a nonprofit organization, and I believe it does exist in the Houston area as well. And this program, this organization is called Communities in Schools, or CIS. And they provide a lot of different services, starting from K all the way through 12. And I believe that program is a lot more robust, and can also provide, a number of similar type of services for students that maybe don't qualify for a TRiO program or are not in that particular district. So TRiO programs and Communities in Schools, or CIS, are two organizations that are doing a lot of great work. And I would encourage folks to, seek them out when they are looking for other opportunities to get information into their students' minds or hands.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Darrell. I appreciate that, man. I think that's going to help a lot of people out. So I just want you to kind of summarize that. So thanks so much for sharing that.
Yeah, no, that was excellent, Darrell. And believe it or not, we've been talking for almost an hour, or over an hour. I think we could
talk. Andrew will tell you, I'll if y'all let me talk, I'll talk for till the cows come home. I mean, yeah, I can be a little bit of a chatterbox.
No, it's perfect, because him and I, and we're gonna have to bring you on for another episode, because we really value, or particularly your top level view of trends, particularly in higher ed, when touching on these different communities, minorities, first gen, low income, that are trying to get into STEM or into higher ed in general.
And then the other thing too, one of my own research interests, and there's a little bit tied to this in my own dissertation, is what's happening to Black and brown males in higher ed. where are they going? Because they're matriculating in at higher rates than we've ever seen, which is amazing, but they're not finishing. And that's some very interesting research too, because we need them in the workforce too. We need them at the table as well. And so that's kind of what my own research area and dissertation is kind of looking at. What exactly is contributing to the reverse in the trend, because we were doing very, very well, and now it's kind of we're going backwards. And a lot of folks are not talking about that.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's very interesting. Feel free to use myself and Andrew as guinea pigs in your studies, because we can both express similar experiences with the lack of, particularly male people of color, not being as abundant in these professions. So, but Darrell, and for the sake of time, we want to go ahead and end with our deep dive question. And this is a question that we ask all of our guests, and it's an opportunity to really have a hot take or have an expression of your feelings about higher ed. And the question comes in as, what if you had the Infinity Gauntlet from the Avengers that you can use to snap anything or anything into existence? If you had that, what policy or resource or habit would you bring into the world to help more people of color, low-income students, first-gen students to reach STEM or higher ed in general? And this could be a global, local, national scale. You can take it any direction you want.
That's an awesome question. But I feel, and there's a number of little things that are floating around in my head. And I think the one that keeps like, pick me, is the one that I'm going to go with, because it's getting the most attention in my mind right now. And I think if I could, wave my magic wand or snap my fingers, one thing that I would do is I would make, we'd have universal higher education for free. I think that we would, make it affordable for folks. And because that's really one of the main barriers for people. And when we think about creating equity, right, because it's not just about the equality, but the equity piece. When we truly create that equity and truly create a level playing field for folks, I think that is one way that we could do that, taking away that burden for folks, and letting them truly focus on their academics and their studies. Man, the things that we could do, I think would be worth the investment, because you think about all of the students like yourselves and me included, being first gen folks, and trying to work your way through college, not knowing how you're going to make it, how you're going to pay for tuition, or to pay to keep the lights on, or what you're going to eat ramen noodles for the next 2 weeks. That stress, believe it or not, doesn't truly allow you to be fully immersed, if you will, in your academic experience, because there's always going to be, that in the back of your mind looming. How am I going to pay for this? How am I going to keep this on? I need to find another job. I don't have somebody that can help me. Those things also contribute to stopping out. And if you look at, Latino and Black folks, number one reasons for not finishing their higher education, it's financial reasons. And the second, any guesses on the second? Y'all want to take a guess?
Oh. The reason why people drop out, I would say mental health issues.
That's really close. It's actually family. So family, family, obligations, got to help take care, of abuela and abuelo, or have to take care of your tia, or you have to help with a neighbor, or you have a younger brother, and it gets overwhelming for people, and they decide, it's just going to be easier for me I'll come back. Mm-hmm. And they don't come back. So yes, I would make higher education either more affordable or just make it free for everybody. So that more people wouldn't have to worry about that burden. They could take advantage and really seek out the potential that they have with what higher education can provide.
Yeah, that's the same answer I gave Darrell, and I'm pretty sure Eli would give the same one. And we're kind of finding that's the common thread there. And I'm glad like universities are taking steps in the right direction with actually putting these $100 million endowment funds to use and like saying, hey, let's actually pay for people to go to school. So, or let's make it that they don't have to pay to go to school, and so that they can actually get in the game. And I know me and Eli use sports analogies a lot with this podcast, but I think about like just basketball or football, right? Like you have this hurdle. Well, in basketball and football, the thing I love is like there's no hurdle, there's no roadblock preventing you from playing. But with education, higher education, there's always these different impediments that come in there, and finances are the biggest one. So I think if you just remove that, you can allow more kids to get in the game. And then from there, you can kind of see, okay, you can kind of judge and see, okay, where these kids stand up. But right now, I think it's just we can't even get a lot of the kids to get in the game and get an opportunity. So
Yeah.
hopefully, things are kind of changing the right path.
You need to work on your layup. You need to work on your defense, and you like seeing where folks are. You can spend your time and your energy on helping those students, coaching those students. I love the sports analogies too, by the way. Coaching those students, mentoring those students, and helping them, and also sharing the wealth, right? Letting them know where these opportunities might exist. They may not want it or do it, but at least they know that it is out there.
Yeah.
So I think, yes, definitely making college more affordable would really be a game changer, man. That really would.
No, I thank you, Darrell, for that answer. I love this question. You know, it forces folks to dream big, but also it kind of forces you to encapsulate the fundamental issue you think is that's preventing more people of color, you know, from our communities to reach higher ed. I love this question. I think there's nothing wrong with dreaming big. If you reach for the stars, you might end up in the clouds. So, you know,
I love that.
You know, so, but anyway, thank you so much, Darrell, for giving your time and your experiences, your story, and your perspective. We really appreciate that.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. I'm humbled by this opportunity, and shout out again to Andrew for doing some great things. You know, I always love to see students that are, you know, paying it forward and helping other folks with their altruistic selves. I love that, and I'm here for it. So I'm happy to help support you, and I wish you all the best of luck. And if there is anything else that I can do to lend a hand in your own venture here, please don't hesitate to reach back out, because I'd love to support you in any way that I can. And congratulations on doing the good work.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll definitely be in contact. Number one, I mean, once you finish your dissertation, we got to get you back on to hear about what's affecting the numbers of Black and brown men going into higher ed and STEM. I'm really interested in that. But then also, yeah, definitely we'll be in contact so you can figure out ways we can support each other and hopefully grow this podcast and the impact that it has on students. So thanks again, man. It was a no-brainer to get you on here and talk about the different programs that UTSA and offers. Not only that, but federal programs that are out there that people may not be aware of. So thanks for sharing all your knowledge, and look forward to having you back on sometime in the future.
If I could share one last little piece.
Yeah, go ahead.
That I think is really important. You know, sometimes folks don't realize their true potential for a number of different reasons. And one thing that I think is important to note is that we all have that potential. Thinking though that the programs that I referenced today, which are doing some great things, they didn't just magically appear, right? It wasn't because folks thought, oh yeah, you know, Black and brown folks need these services. Let's put these programs together. It didn't happen that way. It happened because there was a little bit of resistance and pushback, and there was organizing and community involvement, and people were coming together and voicing their concerns, and built a movement. And so I share all this because it's important for folks to make sure that they realize that they have a voice, and sometimes that voice translates to a voting box, and who they're supporting and how they support and if they vote at all. And this is not a political conversation, but we have to really have that true conversation, real talk. The end of the day, these funds come from the legislature. And if the legislature doesn't support this funding or doesn't vote for this funding, then these programs go away. And every year, there is an effort every year, where students, alumni, professionals, they march on Capitol Hill and they tell the legislators, TRiO works. We need you to support this because it helps so many communities. And it takes a lot of work. And so every year I feel like we're always in jeopardy with this, whenever there's a new administration, we always feel like we're gonna get tossed out here. And so I share that because the community needs to know that their voice matters, representation matters, and they can vote, their voice can vote and make a whole lot of difference for other people. But if we don't and we're silent and the community doesn't rally, we could jeopardize the entire thing. And just being mindful of that, because we do depend on those funds, and they're not always as safe as we think that they are, if that makes any sense. So not to be all humdrum,
Absolutely.
but it is a reality, and I like folks to know I'm not telling you who to vote for, but I'm telling you to vote.
Yeah.
And make sure that you do your research and know who you're supporting, because that impacts not only my livelihood, right, in my job, but also the opportunities that we help to create for students too. So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we I don't know, Eli, we talked about that, right? Closed mouths don't get fed. Like
Yes.
nobody ever just went out their way and was like, you know what, let me think about who I can help. I'm talking specifically politicians, right?
Yeah.
They're not like, oh, let me think about who needs this money and these resources. You better get out there and make noise. And I mean, that's always been the case for anybody that's been disenfranchised or abused or whatever the case may be. So yeah, definitely make sure you get out there and make your voices heard in whatever way you can. So
exactly. Yeah, they just didn't just sit down and say, you know what, let's do more for Black and brown folks. Let's do more. It just didn't happen.
Yeah, I know we all equal, but let me just make sure we are.
No, it was all these things are demanded, fought for. But yeah, no, the politics might not be in. You might not be into politics, but politics is very much into you. So but I understand. No, that's a great message, Darrell. Again, that's another episode we can dig into about that, because it's hard to decouple these things, because like you said, a lot of these programs are federally funded, and who makes the decisions on how those federal funds are spent? Congress. And who is in charge of Congress? Well, technically, it's us. It's up to us.
Exactly.
Who makes who makes those decisions? So
that's another conversation.
That's another conversation. But you're completely correct, and I'm glad you brought that up. We have to be mature and be real about this. Like, hey, this shit matters.
Well, there was a time. So we're about to go into our 5th year of funding for McNair. So 6 years ago, or maybe 6.5 years ago, we weren't sure that we were going to get funded. Like we really did not think. And so we told the students to prepare for, this is it. It's nice knowing you. And it came in like at the 11th hour, but I mean, I've seen programs that have not been refunded, or, I was on a call the other day and someone was like, well, what happened to this school? Oh, they're no longer part of the program because something happened. And so, yeah, that's another reality that we have to think about, for sure. Yeah. So
I'm trying to think 5 years ago.
For sure.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what else happened 5 years ago where you're like, where my funding might be in jeopardy. All right. What's up, Eli?
Andrew, so I just failed at concluding the episode, so I'll let you give it a
No, man,
shot.
that's cool. No, man, it's hard. Like the ending part is always like you're trying to sneak in one more thing. But no, man. So I think we're good. Darrell, man, I appreciate you so much. Like just on a personal level. When I did my interview with Eli, LSAMP was probably like the number one most important thing that I did. And the impact that you and Dr. Millwater had on my life and my career is really invaluable. I can't really put a number on that. So I appreciate all the support and everything like that. And you're a man of your word, so I know you'll support us and help us out in any way we can. So I look forward to being in contact with you. But man, thanks again for coming on our show. Thank you all for watching this on YouTube or Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever you're watching it at. My name is Andrew Baines, and this is my co-host,
Eliseo Iglesias.
And thank you all for watching. Peace.
Peace.